Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Prasada Talks Strengths at Work. Thank you if you're here in the Zoom room with us, or if you are watching this recording sometime after the fact. We are really excited to be here. Let me just introduce you to let's all introduce. Some of us are familiar faces. Sarah's a newish face. She's one of the faces behind the scenes. But we wanted to just introduce you to the team and dive into this topic that we're exploring this month. So I am Meg Townsend. I'm a whole being guide and the director of program development here at Prasada. My top three strengths are appreciation of beauty and excellence, bravery, and social intelligence. Alice, tell us about you and what are your three top strengths?
Hi everybody, glad to be here. My top three strengths, interestingly, have changed over the years, and that's one of the interesting things about taking the assessment and living a life, a human life. So recently, honesty came up as one of my top strengths, and that was a very new one. But the ones that consistently still sort of show up at the top are love of learning and curiosity, and also appreciation of beauty and excellence.
Sarah, tell us about you, your role at Prasada, and what are your
Yes.
strengths?
Hi, everybody. So I am the Director of Communications and Client Services here. So I deal directly with our clients and, bring everything back to our team to try to support the client the best way possible with all the different programs that we offer. My top strengths, like Alice, they have changed over the years. Not so much the top three, but like some of the bottom ones will change. My top strength is always humor. It always seems to come out at the top. And I have curiosity and social intelligence as rounding out the top three there. But it does make sense a little bit with what I have to do during the day, working with people that I'm, very curious about how we can help them solve problems, and then, the listening piece and the social intelligence piece there. And then, whatever bumps in the road pop up, usually trying to insert humor to de-stress people is usually very helpful.
You just moved right into the next question, which was
Yeah.
how do you how do you use your strengths at work? And so last week we're exploring strengths all month. And we explore strengths all day, every day at Prasada. That's one of the kind of core things that we teach and that we practice. So last week we just introduced you to the strengths and talked a little bit about them, where they come from. And this week we really wanted to focus on how do we use our strengths at work personally as a team, and then how do we also see our clients that we work with as we give them this information and really go through interactive sessions with them. We have a strengths at work leadership training program, how we see them light up with them and then start to integrate them as they work on their teams. So Sarah, thank you for
Yeah.
spidey senses and social intelligence to move things forward. That's how you use your strengths at work. Alice, how do you use some of your top strengths in the role that you play at Prasada, which is, what is it? Tell us. I know some people
Queen
know.
bee.
Queen bee.
Queen bee of the hive.
I'm the wacky person who had this idea that we wanted to be in corporate wellness in 2009. So it's been a little while now. Um, and I think it was interesting when I had an architecture practice and had an architecture firm, that you're always working with a variety of different people in architecture, and when you're working on a project with a lot of different skill sets. And so in that way, a lot of times we do recognize each other's different roles. We know that like your tasks are these things and your roles are these things when we look at the different people who make up an organization. But what we don't realize is what are people's innate character strengths, and those are very different. And so a lot of times in a task oriented focus, we can say, okay, well, you and I have some tasks that overlap, and so we can sort of help each other out sometimes. When you put this layer of finding out what is it that make people tick what are their innate superpowers? And when you get this next layer of understanding both yourself and how you're using, either not using, underusing, or overusing your strengths, and I'll talk about that in a minute, how I've overused some of my strengths. But as you start to get to that level, and Sarah and I had a meeting together this morning, and we were talking about how just over the years, we've all worked together now over 10 years. And now we have this totally different level of appreciation and understanding for each other. And we have created this, what I really talk about a lot with our clients is this interdependency. So we're able to know. So I was very proud of my creativity skill, and I use that a lot. It helped me innovate this company. It helped me whenever we've gotten into problems to figure out the creativity and the creative problem solving. I mean, they say that that's the most important 21st century business skill is creative problem solving. That's just solving all the problems that we have every single day. However, it was not until the team started building as we started working together that I realized like my creativity could also be overused, because if I show up at every single meeting with 5 different new ideas that I didn't talk about yesterday or the day before, that kind of creates havoc on the team. And
No.
it also, yes,
Talking about Alice.
exactly.
We have
And
no idea what you're talking about.
exactly. And it was sort of destabilizing for the team. And it wasn't until I had the capacity to recognize, okay, maybe I'm overusing that. I did not take it personally. This is part of the other thing we talk about, emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, to say, hey, wait a second, whenever other people on the team would just be getting frustrated because I would be saying, not only did I have a creative idea, but let's brainstorm this and make a decision right away. And when you look at some of the strengths, you look at maybe judgment and creativity. Well, you could say, well, those are opposite, but to make a good decision, you actually need both of those skills. We say in the program that everybody has all of the strengths, but most of us have a whole sort of group of it. That's the radio channels that we like the most. And so recognizing that we need all the strengths to have a full functioning interdependent team was, in a way, not only just like, oh, aha, revelation, that's so nice, but it's actually a relief,
Yeah.
because so many of the time we're all running around thinking about the things that we don't do well, that we can't do well, that we're just not functioning in. We're afraid to sort of admit that judgment is not my best top skill, and that's okay as long as I can be within an interdependent team.
And know the person that may have a higher level of that to answer those questions that maybe you're having a hard time with the judgment of.
Exactly. So like,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
oh, that was really helpful when we as a team worked through our strengths, because then we learned like, who do we lean into when we need more of this? Because the whole idea of strengths, as you said, Alice, isn't that we're like constantly trying to like fix what isn't working, or, on this ever never ending sort of self-improvement. It's just leverage what's already working, and your top strengths are what just come effortless to you and are exciting to you. So it's, I call Stacy up, and we get Stacy on a Prasada
We
talk.
have to get Stacy on here. I feel like we talk about her and like
But
she's the woman behind the curtain.
she's behind the
Well,
scenes that keeps everything moving. But yeah, like I'll call her and be like, I don't want to bother her. This is probably going to be so annoying. And she's like, sure, I love those types of tasks that you
Yeah.
love. So please lean on me for those.
well, and that's something that sort of evolved on our team. So Meg, Stacy, Sarah, and I have been working together now over a decade. And, all of us each have important roles in the
Virtually. That's very important to know, is that we don't see each other in person like ever.
I see
So
Alice.
side note.
Alice and I do a lot of the presenting. So we
That's true.
Yeah, when we're on site, we might see each other. But that recognition, and I think this happens in a lot of organizations, that there is a organizational hierarchy. So it's like, well, these people have more responsibility, and so their jobs are then more important. However, every person's job
Yeah.
is important, and every person's skill set is important.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another thing, that when we put this layer of what are these skills, oh, I mean, what are these character strengths for people to really recognize that it doesn't matter what your title is. If you're able to bring that to the team, if you're able to bring that judgment or that honesty or that perseverance to the team, all all character strengths are equal and absolutely critical.
Yeah.
I felt like it was also really interesting. I mean, Meg, you were in that group when we talk about how we work with different clients, is in the social service group that we worked with. And do you want to tell that story about sort of the people who weren't recognizing their own their own strengths?
Oh, you are better at telling this story because you've got it in your brain. I don't have it so much on the
So,
my brain.
well, so we go into it. We're in a lot of Zoom sessions, and a lot of times people are being a little bit quiet. And we were working with a social service agency, and one woman said they got their report, because you can get a report, and she was like, "Well, I don't know. I just don't know. I got this strength of love. Like, what the heck?" She was just like, "I don't think that's me." And like three people immediately unmuted and were like, "Mary, you are the one that like gets us through the really hard places." I mean, they just were not going to have any part of Mary not valuing that skill of love. We also had a group recently, and one of the things that we love doing is we love whenever, Meg, talk about how we assess like a whole team's
Actually have a
strengths.
couple prepared I can show y'all. I took off the logos so you won't see what companies they are, but it's really interesting. Let me share my screen. So this is one of the things that we do that is my favorite thing, is taking all of their strengths assessments, and eventually as people fill out their Prasada strengths report. Wait, let me present so that it looks better. So let's go back a little bit to this.
Oh, yeah, I remember that
This
one.
company does a lot of people facing, public facing, and fundraising. And so, and work with a lot of finances, and so this was interesting. Their top strengths: honesty, fairness, and this kindness and love. And they were just actually like a hilarious group. They were really fun to work with, but they were all shocked nobody had zest.
I know that's not even 1 star. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
Well, and Meg, tell about how we make these charts. Like how do
Oh
we
yeah.
come?
Sorry, I'm assuming everyone knows. So before we work with a company, we have everybody take the strengths assessment, and then I get access to those results, and I take everybody's top 5 strengths and I put them in this chart with these stars. So you'll see this is the entire company, everyone who took this training program, their top 5 strengths in a star chart. So you can see then as a company, their top 5, as an organization, their top 5 strengths sort of overall, which is interesting. And then flick through to this one. I think this is the one you were alluding to, Alice, some nonprofit that we worked with recently, and we met with their board, and these were very different strengths than, spirituality and love of learning were higher up in that category. And then where's the, hold on, this, we've got some Abe. Okay, so then we have some companies that we've been working with who are more so in like recruiting. And I thought it was really fascinating that Abe, which is appreciation of beauty and excellence, in some of these more, again, people connecting, but like looking at and recognizing sort of what the best in people is so they can help place them. Abe shows up in both of those companies as really, really high, as well as this perspective and honesty. So yeah, really, really
Yeah,
fascinating to see.
it's also really interesting because when you look at, companies are always thinking about like how they can appreciate their employees recognition and appreciation. They're slightly different. Recognition is oftentimes about you achieved a certain thing, you met your sales goal, or you completed this task, or you did this program. When we talk about appreciation, a lot of times they in the studies show that it's most effective whenever it is actually recognizing a person's character and who they are and the way they went about doing something. So in one of the social service groups, we were talking, we actually sort of just in the moment at one of the programs, we asked the question of what is one of the most, think about the most meaningful impact you've had with the families that you work with. So this is a social service agency that works with families who have a member of the family has an intellectual disability. So we said, what was one of the most meaningful interactions or that you've had, with one of the families you've worked with? Like, write that down. And they were at the beginning of the program just really frustrated because a lot of times they can't get all the services. They're matching a family with all these different services, state services and other federal services. And so sometimes they can't get the handicap ramp. They can't get the wheelchair. They can't get the special class for the person. So a lot of times they were feeling like we're not really serving our clients. Well, when they reflected on what was the most meaningful experience with their clients, they realized that one of them said, unmuted and said, I brought humor. I was able to bring some lightness to this continual struggle that we're trying to get these services. And that really kind of changed. Or I brought hope. And so there was just this aha moment for kind of all of us in that it wasn't delivering the services. Those are absolutely important. But it was the way that they were being humans, caring for their clients and their families that actually made the difference. And it was the character strengths that they brought to those relationships that really was the thing that made a difference.
That's interesting because, Alice, when we were just talking this morning about Alice and I were having our one-on-one, like a quarterly review of performance, things like that. And we got into our discussion about connection and how it's so deeply human that, the value in some of these programs that I'm finding that the clients are coming back and telling us, or that when I explain what the programs are, it's fitting into their need of connection. It's like this untapped space for leadership, for personal development. We're in now a time where they say it all the time, we're the most connected, yet we're the loneliest we've ever been. And the human connection and the need to understand each other empathetically cannot be replaced by technology. That is something that it will never be replaced. And, mark my words, 200 years from now, but that is not going anywhere. AI, ChatGPT, they cannot replicate that human connection. So using these programs to get groups together and the value that they have learning them together is starting to really lift up the organization in a different way, because on a day-to-day, we all have tasks that we have to finish on our own and complete, and that are our duty to fulfill. But when we get together, we find that the pieces that we love and appreciate so much are the connection pieces. The other part that you said today, Alice, that I thought was really interesting when we were talking about connection is it's not always this fluff feeling of good and joy and happiness. And true, authentic connection is not, you said this, is not just a feel-good emotion. And that is something that Alice and I were talking about, because one of the and I will share this about my own experience, is that one of the things I value the most is my connection with Alice. Alice is my boss, but I have such a trust that has been built over the years through the work that we've done, specifically these strengths programs that we've done together, that our deepest connections have come from our disagreements and the way that we speak to each other when we either need to get back on track or we need to say that we don't agree with how something is going with work. And those have pushed us so far forward in our relationship together as our working relationship, that is why I think we are able to get so much done in such a small amount of time, because there is just this unspoken trust that has been built over these years, because we rely on each other for these strengths. When Alice gets on her creative bandwagon and I have enough, humor and social intelligence to say, Alice, let's get back on track, but I have a way to talk to her because I know how to get through to her, that we can complete so many things at a small size of, the core group we are, because we've built that connection and we've used our strengths to do it. And we've used the fact that we've learned them together. And that's the piece that I try to explain to the clients, is that, can we do these individually? Absolutely. But when clients are coming to me and saying our organization is suffering as a whole because people are burned out, they are stressed, they have anxiety, I'm finding that helping them get back to the basics of creating authentic human connection together has been the answer to a lot of what they're struggling with. And these programs keep showing us time and time again that what clients are walking away from with their, what did you love the most about it? I loved getting together with my coworkers and having these experiences for 60 minutes, 90 minutes a week or a month or what have you. And those are the things that we're seeing on, surveys that people really love about it. And those, they can't be replicated. And it's really valuable. It's really refreshing to see it. But do you agree? Do you understand what I mean when I say all of that stuff about us as a team? I mean, we've only worked together this long and gotten better, I think, because we have a deep connection.
Yeah, and that trust, because I mean, the other part of what Sarah and I were talking about this morning is like we all have a life, and we all have things that are happening. We all are going to lose somebody that we care about. We're all going to have a September where our kids are going back to school, and it's got a lot of activity. I mean, we're all human beings, and we're all going to have points where we have weaknesses and we're not able to see clearly. And the way that I've said this last year in a video for some programs we were working on, the way that we're going to change the world that we want to see for our children and our grandchildren is the way that we care for one another. And we can all care for one another. You can have that generosity of sort of like reaching out to somebody. But I think one of the big things is, are you able to receive? So oftentimes if somebody says like, oh, how you're doing, how are you doing? We don't have the courage to honestly say like, today, I'm not doing that great. I'm really in a place of grief. I'm really sad about something. And I'm only at about 3/4 speed. I'm doing my best. And to be able to say, I'm open to receive some help and support today. We see that as a weakness. And yet that's actually a strength. It's a strength to be able to be that self-aware, to be able to recognize that we all have those places, and to be able to have somebody and trust somebody enough to say like, I'm telling you that you're not going to use it as a weapon on me. You're going to say like, hey, I got extra energy today. I mean, Brene Brown talks about checking in with her husband every night and saying like, how much do you got? How much do I got? Okay, I can cover yours for today. You can cover mine for today. And if neither one of us have enough to get to 100, what are we going to do? That's the reality of the human condition.
Yeah.
That, so often when people are in this little box themselves, thinking they have to be perfect, thinking that they're so certain about every single thing, and they're cutting themselves off. We're in this place of just intense amount of stress, this obsession with with independence in our culture. And the companies that we have seen over and over again, and we hear stories, we tell stories, wrote about the Ursa oil rig building a couple of weeks ago, over and over and over again, decade after decade. Whatever research it is says it's about people live longer when they're connected with other people. Companies perform better when they care. Employees stay at the companies where they actually have a connection with the people and their well-being and how they interact, and time for that is actually appreciated and made space for. So that's what I find just so interesting. And Sarah, you brought up the article about sort of like this idea of soft skills
Yeah.
the other day.
Yeah. So it's funny sometimes, talking with clients and having them understand, we're not just this wellness company where we're teaching these fun, feel good emotions. All of the things that we are teaching have become business critical skills. There have been a lot of articles where people are writing about we need to get rid of the word soft skills because they're not soft they're just skills. And I find it so interesting because we've been talking about that for a few years as a company and trying to have people understand about the fundamentals of wellness or the fundamentals of well-being are not just, these soft, feel good
Woo
tools that you get to
woo
use.
woo. Woo woo
Woo
skills.
woo. Woo woo is, yeah, people like to put us in that little bubble sometimes, and that's okay. But it's interesting because when they start to realize that you just need specific skills to get through your day or through an hour, it depends on what you do for a living. Sometimes you just need an actual plan of, if I get an email into my inbox that is going to make my head explode, what are the tools I have in place to bring myself back down to an okay temperature so that I can respond as a respectful adult and still get my point across. So it's having that social awareness piece and all of these things that we'd like to think that everybody has. And the expectation of that is just, it's not a reality. Not everybody has that.
Well, and so often it's not that we don't know it, we didn't learn it, but if you look at generationally, the way that we were parented and the skills that our parents had and the things that they taught us to not have emotions. They taught us to be tough. They taught us because they were trying to make us really strong so that we could survive, so that we could thrive, all those other kinds of things. So now we have different set of tools. We live in a different environment and we have to constantly sort of be reassessing, what do we need right now? So you talked about like, yeah, dealing with the email, but also we need to have the wherewithal so that we can totally innovate. So when our company needs to pivot, the company can pivot and that you
Mm-hmm.
can get together in a huddle really quickly, a couple of you, and say, hey, we've got this situation. Because Marty Seligman's latest book, Tomorrow Mind, which is just an amazing, amazing book, says, yes, things are changing more quickly. And the thing that we have now that we didn't have before is that we have this huge body of work. We have science and research that shows us how our
Yeah.
brains work, why it is that we are reacting this way, what it was that our parents or caregivers did, not intentionally, but that created certain patterns and reactions in us. We have the science. This is not just like feel good stuff. Once you figure out what that is, you make those conscious shifts. It ripples through every relationship in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing that we have found at Prasada is, we've all been through bumpy times, all of us, and that our work and the guy who wrote, I'm not going to remember his name, but he wrote it's the Surgeon General who wrote Workplace and Well-Being at Work. It's a new document that came out in 2020. I've written about it in a couple of the blogs. He talked about how work as a health engine, like being at work, doing work, when work is and the kind of construct that you have within the workplace, that is a place for you to individually and collectively thrive. So, how do we make the workplace like that? And it doesn't take millions of dollars, it takes the right
Mm-mm.
kind of training.
And the environment to allow people to flourish from what they're going to learn.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that piece of appreciation and recognition of everybody's individual strengths, what they bring to the big picture. And I mean, that brings such value to people's days. Is just kind of knowing what are my inherent gifts and how am I contributing them here. And yeah. Yeah. It's almost one. That went fast.
Yes.
Was it fast? So Alice, tell us a little bit about what's coming up Friday with you. And then we'll
Yeah.
get everybody on their way, but you're doing character strengths, your compass for life on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, so we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the 24 character strengths, how you might do your assessment, and then again, how do you see what those are? They break down into some different virtues and some different categories. So how do yours kind of lump all in one place? And then how might you use them? What would it look like on a day-to-day basis once you knew your top 5 strengths? How you might actually put that into action and how it could impact. I'll give a little bit of the research behind it. There's just so much research behind the Strengths at Work program by the VIA Character Institute. So I'll dive a little bit deeper into that also.
Awesome. And if you're coming to that, I just put a link in the chat. If you're here with us live, click that, take the survey and bring your results, because that will be just a helpful extra tool for you to to play with as you're learning more about that with Alice. And that'll be at 12:30 on Friday the 15th. Thank you all for joining us live today or watching the recording. Thank you, Alice and Sarah, for coming on. And we'll be back next month for a new theme and some more Prasada talks. So enjoy Alice Friday. And then until our paths cross again, please be well and take care.